In today's video, we are going to discuss story retelling. Retelling is the process of writing a story again, often in a different way than the original. Think of Belle, an anime original film based on the classic fairy tale Beauty and the Beast, but mixed with science fiction elements. Think of Princess Tutu, an anime that combined The Ugly Duckling, Swan Lake, and classic ballet stories. Think of Fables by Bill Willingham, a comic series that features characters from various folklore. Throughout history, classic stories have been brought back to appeal to a modern audience. Retellings create a sense of familiarity to readers while also giving the author an opportunity to look at a story and characters in a new way. Joining me in today's video is Zeo Niu. Niu has recently created a graphic novel called Monkey alongside David Bautista, Nikos Kostas, and Rico Renzi. What's interesting about this story is it is a modern retelling of a classic story, Journey to the West.
Hi, my name is Zeo Niu. I am a stand-up comedian and writer based in Los Angeles. I was born and raised in China and just finished a project called Monkey. If I have one tagline for this whole project, it's Monkey is the trippy history you wish you had learned in high school. So it's kind of like a Tank Girl / Forrest Gump kind of approach. It focuses on our main character, Monkey, and his journey basically spanning over 500 years. So from his beginning, hatched from a dinosaur egg in a paleontology, site, to his conflicts and war against the American government and Russian government with the Cold War as the backdrop, to the eventual triggering World War III and post-apocalyptic journey with him and his gang. It's gonna be an ongoing series. I finished 2 issues. I'm gonna launch issue 1 very soon on June 11th. You can follow us on Instagram. The tag is Monkey the Comic. If you guys like it, you can back the project.
You mentioned that you were a stand-up comedian and a journalist. Can you tell us how you got to where you are right now? Did you wake up one day and decide to become a graphic novelist?
I was born and raised in China. I mentioned I learned violin from age 4 to 18. Every day I was forced to learn violin for 3 hours. So I don't really have a childhood. One of my only relief is Journey to the West, which is the most popular television series for any Chinese kid at the time. It was an adaptation from the 16th century Chinese fantasy novel, which is a classic. I did not grow up with all the Marvel and DC superheroes like American kids did. Monkey King is my superhero. About a few years ago, I saw the band Gorillaz. They did a concept design and music design for a musical called Journey to the West. They collabed with this Chinese director, and then this musical was premiering in London and stuff. So the artist behind Gorillaz, who's also the author for Tank Girl, stuff like that, Jamie Hewlett, he did a bunch of pinups and concept design for characters in Journey to the West. And that's the first time ever for me to see Monkey King and the whole Journey to the West story depicted by a Western artist in a very punk and cool way. When I saw those, I fell in love with it. I was like, man, if there's a comic book series or a graphic novel, I really want to see more, but based on this kind of aesthetic. And that's the starting of the whole project. It's me coming up with a story and then try to reinvent what I would like to see. When I was in college, I got an internship in an international news agency. So that has been my job. I actually started working very young, when I was 20 years old, still in school. I would skip school and then go to Beijing. It's a long story. I don't like my college. I wish I never got the degree, to be honest. I think this is a huge waste of time, in my opinion. I work at this news agency and then started to work in foreign news. When I say foreign news, I mean every international news agency, like AP, CNBC, NBC, CNN, they basically have an office in Beijing, and that's their Asia Pacific Bureau. That lasted for a few years. At the time when I was a journalist, I also translated a few books. I translated 2 books about grunge music. I'm a big music fan. One is an oral history about grunge. The other one is Kurt Cobain's biography. So after I got here, I started my translation business. Right now I own a translation company, and we do all kind of subtitles, software, gaming, localization, or translation. And through and through, I always had this goal, and I wouldn't call it a dream, a goal of being a writer. I've written a lot of scripts and performed stand-up, and even right now, I feel like I have a disadvantage of English being my second language. And I feel like if I write in another language, it's gonna be a huge challenge in terms of vocabulary size and the language being natural or not. And I feel like graphic novel as a visual medium will kind of bypass that kind of hurdle. Things are visual, and as long as the dialogue is natural, people won't notice the weirdness in language, and I can bypass that.
While many of the characters might feel familiar to the original tale, their outfits, personalities, and everything else feel a lot more modern. I think I can safely say I have never seen Journey to the West told like this.
The whole visual idea comes from Gorillaz' work on Monkey, the musical. So story-wise, Journey to the West has been adapted millions of times. There are different ways to retell the story, like Dragon Ball Z is based on it. A lot of people probably don't know Inuyasha. The whole story structure and character design is exclusively based on Journey to the West. It's uncanny from the beginning to the journey to like the different characters and their personality clashes, how the main character can confine Inuyasha with the curse, that's all from the original story. But nobody knows. And then it's such a classic. I can just pilfer so much from it. But what I didn't want to do is just to retell the same story. I want a story to be completely different. A lot of movies are just a retelling of the Bible story or Shakespeare. I feel like A Journey to the West is like our Shakespeare. Personally, I wouldn't call myself a history buff, but I'm always very interested in weird history, like the LSD experiment back in the 60s. They're used to send like chimps to space to experiment stuff, and the whole Cold War and all kinds of different experiments. It just sounds nuts these days. For me, I feel like it's very interesting to put Monkey under the backdrop of that, because I haven't really seen that being done before. Every single adaptation I've seen is also always based in like a fantasy setting. Everything is, is really detached from our reality. And I feel like if it's integrated in real history, it will add a very interesting flair to it. That kind of is my biggest inspiration. And once that gets started, it's actually very easy to come up with stories because there's so much weird shit happening in history. And then I know the original Journey to the West story like the back of my hand.
So something I am curious about is this idea of creating a faithful adaptation. In a sense, an anime series is a retelling of a pre-existing manga series. I'm sure many fans can agree some anime adaptations are better than others. One of the most common criticisms with manga to anime adaptations is this idea of faithfulness. Some fans don't like when certain scenes, characters, or storylines are changed from the source material. Are you concerned about staying faithful to the original Journey to the West?
Journey to the West itself is an adaptation of a tale. Monkey King is a folklore in the beginning, so you can trace it all the way back to BC 300. There are certain regions in China, I believe it's the southwestern part of China, Fujian province. Today, they have temples where they worship like certain monkeys and gibbons, kind of like a primitive version of like god worshipping or whatever. They believe they're gods and there's certain tales about them. And throughout the history, there's like Chinese opera and there's like Chinese play, all the way to the 16th century when Wu Cheng'en, the original author of Journey to the West, he's the first person to kind of put everything together. Instead of just snatches of like a tale here, pieces of tale there, he kind of systematically just like wrote the whole story about like how he was born, how he, pissed off the heaven, how he was punished, how he embarked this crazy journey with Monk, Pixie, and Sandy.
In my personal experience, coming up with an interesting story idea is one of the harder parts in the comic making process. With retelling, I imagine you are able to skip a few steps since you have sort of a blueprint to work with. In your experience, what has been the biggest challenge with retelling Journey to the West?
I don't think plots are hard to come up with. It's hard to come up with the original character that's intriguing. And since all the work has been done, or most of the work has been done, I can just borrow that and put it in a different setting. It's almost like cheating in a way, in my opinion, to retell a classic story. What you really want to borrow is not exactly what happened in the story. It's about why those characters stay in people's memory and influence generations of readers. Like I said, it's really hard to come up with like a completely original idea. It's about how you tell the story. The best way to steal is to take what's good and then come up with something that's unique.
So I saw on your Kickstarter page that your team consists of a writer, a lead artist, a colorist, and a letterer. This setup is very similar to the comic teams you might find at a Western publisher like Marvel, DC, or Image Comics. Can you tell us a bit about the team working on this project?
So the team consists of David Mongo Bautista. He is an artist based in Spain that I found via Facebook groups. I think it's the group called Connecting Comic Book Writers and Artists. His style is very clean, straightforward. He has a sense of humor, it's very dynamic, and his panel flow is just amazing. Then when I tried to look for the colorist, it took me a long time to find the right colorist, because personally I have a very specific vision on what a coloring style would be. I don't like things that's too airbrushed or too glossy or plasticky. like a matte kind of coloring that have the kind of the grittiness, but also is dynamic and vibrant. So eventually I ended up with Nikos. So Nikos is very experienced. He's also a illustration artist. So he has his own series called Errand Boy, published by Image Comic. He has worked for like Image, IDW, Boom Studio. It's a breeze to work with Nikos. The letter is a referral from first artists who work on the horror graphic novel. For the cover art and coloring, I found Rico. I think he worked on some of the Spider-Man stuff. I just paid him to do some of the promo art, the banner, and the cover.
You mentioned that you had a very specific idea for how you wanted the artwork in this graphic novel to look. When I look at Monkey, I see something that is very punk and very anarchist. Tell me where this rebellious art direction came from and how it complements a classic story like Journey to the West.
I wouldn't call myself a punk music fan, but I'm a rock and roll fan for sure. I started to learn English because I loved the band Queen. I was deeply influenced by classic rock. If you want to talk about punk as a concept, then I'm a huge fan of it. And I'm always fascinated by this kind of a rebellious figure. To me, Monkey King, even from the original story, it's definitely a punk hero. Very different from a lot of other superheroes. He doesn't really have a morality system like ours. He's a god and he does things as he wants. And he's the quintessential rebellion and iconoclast figure. So when I was designing the clothing and the character design for Monkey, I basically just sent my artist David pictures of Billy Idol and Sid Vicious. You know, the leather jacket, the spiky hair, you know, the earring, very lanky body, teeny tiny jeans, a boot. For Pixie, also Pierce, he's a hedonist, you know, he's a womanizer, he's a partier, a glutton. I kind of borrow a lot of the costume from Elton John in the 70s. Also a little bit of, I would say, Beatles and Freddie Mercury in terms of the military style jacket.
So what is the goal for Monkey? Is there some sort of key takeaway you want your readers to have after they finish reading your retelling of Journey to the West?
I want a reader's mind to have the same visual that I have, to kind of like be interested in history again. As often as Journey to the West being adapted into different kind of renditions, I feel like in the West, people are not entirely familiar with the story. By setting up the whole story with the backdrop of American history, I want people to really fall in love with this superhero as much as I did as a kid and as an adult.
I know that your Kickstarter campaign for Monkey goes live today. It looks like you were offering a ton of cool rewards, including digital copies, physical copies, variant covers, and deluxe packages. Is the production for Monkey issue number 1 already complete, or will it be produced after the Kickstarter campaign ends?
This issue is done. The second issue, the script and line work is done. So it's pending coloring and lettering. I might make some edits on dialogue and stuff like that, but it's basically done creative-wise. When it comes to planning, one thing I do know is I front loading all the financing. To me, that's the best way to make sure that the artist is, you know, getting fed, getting paid, and project can go on without too much of a dragging and delay. There are a lot of projects comes about is a collaboration between the writer and artist, and basically they take 50-50 share on the whole thing, and then hopefully it will sell or it will generate some kind of income via crowdfunding or Amazon. I'm a business person. Like I said, I run companies. There's too much uncertainty in that kind of model. I feel like good artists need to get paid, and if I front load all the money, you know, at least I have an idea of like, okay, how long it would take for the artwork to get done. The first issue is going to be launched on Kickstarter on June 11th. And hopefully within this year, I can release issue 2. I'm hoping that people will love the first issue. Here's the thing that's very important. I know a lot of Kickstarters are graphic novel that's still in the work that needs funding. This one is already finished. So when you back the project, you will get a physical or digital copy fairly soon. You don't have to wait for the whole series to get finished or not finished at all. I've heard horror stories in the past. So yeah, I deliver and our team will deliver.
I will post links to all of that down in the description box below and in the pinned comment section. Make sure to check it out and make this project a success. Can you remind my audience where they can support you in your work?
So go on our Instagram, Monkey the Comic. We'll post updates and screenshots of the first book. And then also please go to our Kickstarter. The campaign's gonna start from June 11th to, I believe, July 11th. Please support our campaign and keep up with our updates and more to come in the future.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Leave a comment down below telling us about your favorite reimagining of a classic story. If you would like to further support me, consider following me on all of my social media accounts, joining my Discord server by becoming a YouTube member, or purchasing one of my Manga Maker panel templates. As always, keep creating, everyone. I'll see you all in the next one.